Okay, don't go to sleep on me, guys. Okay, so we don't have too much time, so I do sort of want to run through our services, and then I want to sort of build on what they were talking about trauma-informed care, and we're going to briefly talk about trauma-informed care and just sort of the basics of trauma, so you're aware of it. Have you guys ever really not discovered trauma, but spent some time sort of looking through trauma, how it impacts the brain, how a victim responds to trauma? Has anybody ever any work with that? Well, it's incredibly interesting. I will tell you, I'm in grad school right now, and a lot of my focus is on like trauma in the brain and counseling, EMDR, all of that fun stuff. So I'm from the Sexual Assault Center of East Tennessee. My name is Brittany Thompson. Our office here is located on 196 Montgomery Street, so these Family Justice Flyers, that's where we're located. So we have an advocate there, and we have a therapist there, and I'll go into details about that. Our office number is this 423 number, and then we have our 24/7 crisis line, which is the 865 area code. 522-7273 is what it is. I don't know what's that. But I want to let you know, I'm from the Knoxville office, and my intention today was to go and get brochures from the Family Justice Center, and then I got pulled over. So I don't know if you got my text, but basically I'm going to go and get them and bring them back, and that's something that she can scan and distribute to you guys. So I apologize for not having this today. First off, a few statistics. Someone is sexually assaulted every 2 minutes in the United States. So we are the Sexual Assault Center. Does anyone know the difference between sexual assault and rape? Okay. So sexual assault is basically that umbrella term that states any type of sexual violence. So being a Sexual Assault Center, we're all-encompassing of any victim that's ever been abused as a child, been sexually molested, had some type of sexual battery, or if there was rape. We used to be the Rape Crisis Center at one point, and that was heavily focused on rape, and we want to make sure that we provide our services to everyone that's been a victim of sexual violence. 44% of sexual assault victims are under the age of 18, and that's a whole different topic. 80% of sexual assault victims are under the age of 30. So the majority of people that we see is probably going to fall sort of where you guys are at right now. So 16 to 24 ages, that's our most heavily populated people that we're seeing, college students most likely. Approximately 3/4 of assaults are committed by someone the victim knows. So when we watch shows like SVU and all of these other random shows that make this, connection to rape, a lot of times we think that it's someone that we don't know, someone that jumps out of the bushes, someone that, we meet in a dark alley or something like that. Well, the truth is that a lot of the times we know the person, and that's why it is so hard, number one, to come forward about sexual assault, but also to prosecute rape and to prosecute sexual battery, is because we have that tie to that person. 43% are a friend or an acquaintance, so it's someone that we know, someone that we've been in a class with, someone that we maybe work with, someone that we have some type of relationship with. 27% are an intimate partner, and then 2% is a relative. So when we're talking about younger kids, obviously under 18, that number skyrockets, but today we're just talking about adults. So, I don't know if you can see it, but 1 out of how many women have been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime? What do you guys think? 4. Okay, what about men? Okay. So 1 in 6 women and 1 out of 33 men. Okay, so attempted or completed rape, different than a sexual assault, different than that original terminology I used. But number 2, this is going off of reported data. So stuff that has been reported to the police, and we're going to talk about the barriers with that and how hard that is to report that to police. But why do you think that the number with men is so different? What is the stigma attached to that?
They don't report it.
Yeah, why don't they want to report it?
Masculinity.
Their masculinity comes into question. Why didn't you fight back, right? Why didn't you push them off? Why didn't you say no? All of these questions. Well, are you gay? Are you homosexual? Is that something that you're into? Right? All of those things come into question when you're the victim of a sexual assault. How does that make sense? How is that okay? So what is sexual assault? Like I said, I sort of briefly covered that, but sexual assault is that umbrella term defined as intentional, unwanted, or unconsented sexual contact. So if you're forcing me, if you're threatening me, a lot of times we think that, oh, there's a gun, or there's some type of weapon, or there's some type of physical assault in a sexual assault. But what happens when we look back at those numbers, that 3/4 of the people that assault us are people we know, they're not holding a gun to our head. They're holding some type of blackmail over our head. They're manipulating us. They're coercing us, time and time again. Well, just, come on, we did it yesterday, blah, 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 right? I'm pushing you into doing something that you're not comfortable with. And I'm holding the fact that we have some type of relationship against you. So, this includes rape and sexual battery. Now, each state has different laws as what they mean of consent, what they mean about sexual assault, what they mean about sexual battery and rape. In our state, we're actually very progressive. So, the state of Georgia, for instance, the definition of rape in the state of Georgia is a penis and a vagina, which means women cannot be perpetrated against other women, perpetrated by other women. Men cannot be perpetrated against by other men. That's not considered rape for them. But in our state, it's any type of penetration is considered rape. So just be aware of that. So whether it's digital penetration, which means basically a finger, if it's an object, if it's any type of oral penetration, all of that is considered penetration. So just be aware of that. Okay? And then sexual battery is any type of unconsented, unwanted touching. So, in high school, right, we were talking about this the other day at our work. In high school, it was pretty much common knowledge for guys to slap girls' butts, right? We didn't consent to it. We didn't talk about it beforehand. It just happened. That doesn't make it okay, right? That's the thing that we've got to really focus to change is sort of what we're doing, going through our childhood and what we're sort of teaching them. But yeah, that's considered sexual battery. Now, is it actually going to go to court and get prosecuted? That's not my decision. But in terms of the law, that's what it's considered as. So just some laws so you're aware. Basically, every type of sexual violence is considered a felony, okay? So, obviously, your rape of a child, your aggravated rape, those are going to hold a lot more penalties. They're going to be that Class A, which is the highest. But other than that, it really depends on your background, depends on what deal they're going to try to offer you to get you to plead. That's not up to me. But when, it comes to like throwing the book at you, this is what throwing the book at you looks like. So barriers to reporting. Only 34% of sexual assault victims actually report to police. And a lot of times, it's because of that shame and that embarrassment that they were talking about. Imagine having to, number one, it's awkward to talk about your sex life to begin with, right? It's just not something that we want to share with a lot of people. So imagine having to share those intimate details of where you were forced to have sex against your will to someone that you don't know, and most likely someone of the opposite sex. That's not going to be an easy conversation, and that's not going to be something that most of us want to do. A lot of times we're going to take it in on ourselves. We have that fear that we will not be believed. A lot of the victims that we have worked with, they initially told their best friends or someone very close to them, and their friends played it off like it wasn't rape, right? So then they thought, well, if they didn't believe me, there's no way that the police would believe me, right? And they sort of drop it there. They don't know how much control they're going to have after they report. So the whole thing about rape, one of these societal myths that we face is it's a crime of passion, right? Oh, I was just so overwhelmed that I had to have sex with you, right? That's total bullshit. Right? What we find is that rape is a crime of it's blah blah blah. It's a crime of power, and it's a crime of power and control. Okay. So please be aware that if someone says something like that, or they're trying to use that against you, right, they can stop themselves, okay? Not wanting anyone to know, may fear retaliation. So what if that person is my supervisor? What if they're on an athletic team and they're prominent in the community? What am I going to have to go through in order to report that? Because a lot of times, it all falls back on the victim. You were the one who went through this. You were the one who's traumatized, but yet you have to overcome all of these obstacles just to report, just to be heard. May feel guilty or responsible, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of victim blaming and sort of all that comes with that. So false reporting. So there is a project, and we work a lot with law enforcement. So trying to get this to a law enforcement perspective is very difficult because they see a different perspective than we see. But there was a project called the MAD project, and basically what it did is there were no statistics about false reporting prior to this MAD project reporting. So what happens is law enforcement agencies, what am I trying to say? They put the title of a false report on many different things. There was no law enforcement agency that was putting false reporting in sort of a universal thing, like if this happens and this happens, then it's false reporting, right? That wasn't like universal across the board. So what this MAD project did was went to several law enforcement agencies, offered them this opportunity to be universal, to be unified, and file a false report in this way in terms of sexual assault, and then gathered that data. So based on that data, only 2 to 8% of reports of rape are considered false. There's nothing that you are gaining from reporting a rape, right? Really, you're losing a piece of yourself when you do this. It is so hard for people to come forward and talk about it. So it's not something that people do just left and right, like people might think. And there's a lot of other reasons, like I said, it was just that universal thing in that small area. But, across the nation, there's a lot of reasons why people put them as false reports. The investigator can't get a hold of you. Maybe the initial information that you gave them, you withheld a little information, maybe that you were drinking, maybe you were somewhere you shouldn't have been, or something like that, and you're afraid you're going to get in more trouble. So there's a lot of reasons as to why the false reporting rate is the way it is. So this is just something I pulled from RAINN. But this is the sad reality that we're facing every single day. So out of 1,000 rapes, 994 perpetrators were walk free. So the perpetrators that aren't walking free are the ones that there was, that victim at that moment went and got a kit done at least 72 hours pretty much after it happened. There was physical evidence, there was some type of DNA present, there was some type of physical assault most likely, there was maybe it was on videotape. Right, those are the ones where there's extreme evidence to prove that yes, this was not consensual. But all the other ones, right? Rape is a crime that happens behind closed doors, and normally it's between 2 people. Right, there might be more, but normally it's between 2 people, and it's something that's done in secret. So how are they able to prosecute that? How are they able to pull their evidence? Right, that's the sad truth. Right, and this isn't information that we share with anybody, but you guys are wanting to sort of get into a field where you talk to people about their lives and you help them. I want you to be aware, how many of you saw the Me Too movement on Facebook? Right, does anybody? Okay. Like, did that shock anybody? I mean, literally it was everywhere. Now, I work with sexual assault every day, but like literally it was everywhere. My 74-year-old grandmother commented on my post and said, "Me too," right? And so when we look at somebody, at some point, there's a good possibility that they've been victimized. So when you're sitting, and maybe you don't go into victim services, but when you're sitting in front of someone who has a substance abuse issue, or they have been dealing with domestic violence their whole life, or they have a history of mental illness, I can bet you that there's a good chance that there's some type of sexual victimization in there, right? So maybe not ask for it initially, but just be aware that might be sort of lurking right back there. That might be the reason that they're self-medicating and that they can't seem to get clean, right? They can't seem to sober up. It's because something like this might have happened to them. So really quickly, how victims respond. There's no normal response or reaction, so I want you to be aware of that. So when you go out into the world and you're starting to work with people, be aware that if they do suffer from PTSD, and we know the numbers are high for that with sexual assault victims, that there might be an opportunity, or there might be an opportunity, I'm not going to say that, there might be a situation where they are triggered, so we'll talk about that as well. But being aware that every victim of some type of trauma, so this one's sexual assault, but every victim of trauma responds differently. So that normal response that we're thinking of is hysterical and crying and hostile and really just overwhelmed with emotion. It might not be that. You might walk into a situation where you expect them to act a certain way. Well, if they don't act that way, that doesn't mean they're any less of a victim. It just means that the way that their body and their brain is processing that is different than what we expect. So we've got to sort of take away our bias at that point and just back up and say, okay, they're handling this different than I expected, so what can I do to help this? These victims may appear calm, they may appear submissive, they might just be completely chill, right? They might be angry, they might be hostile, they might just be completely irrational. Nothing to do with you, it's everything to do with that trauma that they've just went through. Some of the common reactions that we see, fear for personal safety or safety of loved ones, right? So, imagine when you go through something like this, it's not just the place of the assault, the place where the assault happened that scares you, right? Your whole sense of safety is now shattered. So things that you once felt comfortable doing, you no longer feel comfortable doing those things anymore. So at that point, you're afraid to go anywhere, right? The grocery store that you used to go to, you're afraid that you might see that perpetrator. The gas station that you used to go to, right? You're afraid you might run into somebody. You're afraid you might be triggered. So a lot of times it's just that fear, wanting to stay home and wanting to stay in that safe place. Flashbacks. So when I'm talking about being triggered, right, there's a part in our brain, which I'm going to touch on briefly, but there's a part in our brain that stops working when we go through these traumatic events, okay? So when that part of the brain stops working, the part of the brain that continues working is the part of the brain that processes our emotions and our sensations. Right? It doesn't process our language, it doesn't process our memory filing, but it processes our emotions and sensations, which means they're not being fully processed, right? They're sort of in this raw form, and it makes them so much more easily to be pulled back out. So, the color of the shirt that perpetrator was wearing, the smell of the cologne or perfume that perpetrator was wearing, the song on the radio while I was being assaulted, the ceiling tile, whatever, right? The cars outside. Whatever I was sensing, feeling, smelling, seeing, all of that, if I see that again, it can pull that memory back out. And it's not just like, oh, I'm looking at a picture. It's fully like being involved in that memory again. We had a victim one time who was triggered by something on the radio in her car, and she completely wrecked her car, flipped it, okay? These things happen, and they take over your entire body, just like that trauma did at that first point. Problems with concentration or memory, feelings of guilt or self-doubt related to the traumatic events. So, fight, flight, or freeze. So being aware of this, okay? So a lot of times we only think of fight or flight, right? I'm going to fight to get out of this situation, or I'm going to try to run away. But what we don't consider is this sort of paralyzed with fear, where I'm in this moment and I want to move and I want to fight, but my body is taking over. So regardless of how prepared we feel, when our body goes into that automatic, instinctual, like autopilot, it picks for us. We do not get to make that decision. That's something that's completely up to our body. And then, like I said, the speech center of the brain shuts down during this part. So when you said, did you scream for help? Well, did you say no? I didn't have the ability, okay? Not a relevant question because that was not how my brain was working at that point. And we were going to watch a video, but we're not going to be able to do that. So there's evidence that's stored in the part of the brain that processes our emotions and sensations, but not our language and speech. So this is why it is so hard for a victim to come forward and tell you a beginning to an end story. Not saying it isn't possible, because there are those times where it is, but a good majority of the time they cannot remember important details, right? Think of processing trauma and think of recalling trauma as so some of you taking notes. You're taking notes on your nice, clean piece of paper. You're taking them very tidy. I work very fast. But for the most part, you can look back at it and you can recall what happened in this class. But when you're talking about trauma and how your brain processes that, it's like you have a pile of sticky notes. And you've written things on these sticky notes. You just scribbled them down. And I've taken these sticky notes and I've placed them at random pieces in your brain. So when you have to like flip that switch and you have to recall it, you're not just grabbing your notepad and pulling it out. You're having to try to go back and find all of these little sticky notes that have been placed at random places all over your brain. That's why it's so difficult for victims to recall what happened. Right? And it's definitely not going to be a beginning to end narrative. It's going to be something that's very spread out. It's going to take time. It's going to be something that they have to work through. That's another video we can't watch. But PTSD, just being aware that a lot of these intrusive memories, they're going to basically shut them down, where they're going to get to a point where they're completely detaching from normal life. They're trying to stay out of it as much as they possibly can. So they're going to avoid thoughts, going to avoid feelings, going to avoid memories. Going to avoid anything external because they don't want to have those flashbacks. They're probably already having dreams of sort of what happened because their brain's sort of starting to process it. They definitely don't want to have a flashback. So like I said, a lot of the people that you're going to come into contact have probably been a victim at some point in their lives. So three times more likely to suffer from depression, 6 times more likely to suffer from PTSD, 13 times more likely to abuse alcohol, 26 times more likely to abuse drugs, and 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide. I did a group at the domestic violence shelter a few months ago, and every single person that was sitting in front of me had been sexually abused as a child. And that was not something that it was, you had to be sexually abused to be in the group by any means, but it was like just over the course of the group, they felt comfortable enough to disclose. And it was crazy for me to see that every single person, the things that happen in our childhood, they sort of form our path. So just being aware that a lot of people have been victimized and we don't know it. Okay, so on to our services. So we're under the umbrella of Helen Ross McNabb, but we are the Sexual Assault Center. So we do serve Kroger, Green, Hancock, Hawkins, Johnson, Sullivan, Unicoi, Washington. So our services that we offer, advocacy and therapy. Now, within 72 hours of you being sexually assaulted, if you need a sexual assault examination, ETSU has just started a program, right? So that's amazing. They have sexual assault nurse examiners. You can go to your medical area here, and they will take care of you. If you're not able to do so, you can go to the Johnson City Medical Center and request a sexual assault nurse. Make sure that's something that you ask for, right? And they'll go from there. It should all be free of cost. There's a statute in place that says that everything provided in terms of like a sexual assault examination is free of cost. So just be aware that those options are available. But ETSU has really stepped up and been one of the only programs in Tennessee that has sort of acquired that. So that's amazing for them. But the advocacy and therapy that we offer, they're completely free and they're completely confidential. Only thing we would ever have to report is suspected child or elder abuse. Our advocacy services, so that crisis line that I was telling you about, it's available 24/7, 365 days a year. And we serve victims 13 and older. If you call us and you need help during that examination, then we'll come out to that examination. We also are with you during any police interviews, legal appointments, court proceedings. We will assist you in filing an order of protection if that's something that you need. Support through the criminal justice process. You do not have to report to police in order to receive our services, but if you do, we're going to be with you throughout that entire process. And then, like I said, that crisis hotline coverage. Now, the crisis hotline is out of Knoxville, so you're going to be talking to a Knoxville advocate, but they can relay that information. So our therapists. So this is one thing that makes us different from a lot of places is we have absolutely free therapy. If you've ever been a victim of any type of sexual violence at any point in your life and you're ready to talk about it. If not, that's okay. But if you're ready to talk about it, then you qualify for our therapy. So if you're a victim last week, a victim several years ago, a victim in childhood, you're ready to talk about it, you qualify for our therapy. Our therapist, Melinda Kesey, she is there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at the Family Justice Center. And they're also offered to secondary survivors, people who were initially assaulted, but the impact from their family, their friends, whatever, has been an issue for them, so they're coming forward and receiving services. So we have individual and group therapy, and we also do child's play therapy. So therapists serve all ages. And just being aware that we're trying to work on getting a Johnson City support group together. There hasn't been a lot of interest, so if that ever is something that you're interested in, then we could definitely get that rolling as well. Okay, so what do you do if you know someone that's been a victim of sexual assault? We want to make sure that your safety is the most important thing. So we want to get you to a safe place. You can call 911 if you're interested in reporting, or call our crisis line, and we can advise you where to go, who to talk to, or we can make all of those connections for you so you don't feel like you're by yourself. Get medical attention. So if there's something that you need to get medical attention for, just because you go to a hospital does not mean that you have to report. Remember that your body is the crime scene. That evidence collection is pertinent if you're interested in reporting to police, and if they want to convict that person, they have to have that evidence. So just be aware that try not to shower, brush your teeth, eat, drink, use the bathroom, anything like that, because we want to preserve that evidence the best that we can. And then the most important thing, remember what happened is not your fault. It is not your fault. Okay? So that 24/7 crisis hotline, 522-7273, that is the correct number, not the first one. And then the office 423-202-6427. Okay. Also, if you know anyone that has their degree in social work or something related, we are looking for a therapist. We're looking for an advocate. Our other advocate had a baby, came back, and then she decided she liked her baby more than us. And we get that, okay? So, if you know of an advocate, please sort of send them our way, helenrossmcnabb.com. The application's on there. If you're close to graduating, that might be something. Yeah, are there any questions? Yes.
Do you have to have your master's or bachelor's?
No, bachelor's. Bachelor's, yes.
Do you guys do interns?
We do, and I'm sure that would be something that we would start as soon as we get that advocate. Yeah, but we have interns in our Knoxville office all the time. Are there any other questions? Like I said, I'll get those brochures and get those sent out, and if you have any questions, you can give us a call.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to run you to the last second there.